Another wonderful story from again Melbourne. This is Bismi Palatty, unmuted with me today. I have a wonderful guest. This time I'm going into the element of finance and especially in the property market. Let me welcome Christine Williams from Melbourne, who is sharing her life to find out how we can make more properties in less time. Welcome, Christine, to my show, Unmuted with Bismi Palati.
Thank you very much, Bismi, for having me. And I look forward to hearing from your audience and hoping that whatever I share today can resonate with them and help them move forward with their journey in property.
That's great. Christine, I really would love you to share with my audience what happened in your life and why did you choose property, especially the smarter property investment in your life?
It really came out of need more than anything.
Hmm.
You end up in a relationship that you think is going to go forever, and unfortunately, it finished when the marriage ended. We had to sell the family home, and as a female, even though I had a career and I was working full time, my youngest was in primary school and my eldest was in secondary school, and so knowing that the family home had to be sold, upsetting the family community, everything that we're involved in, having to move out of that area. This was very emotional. I really didn't know what to do. So, to sustain the girls' happiness and
Hmm.
to continue their friends and community and school and not have to change, I decided to rent within the same area. I didn't go out and borrow any more money. I came out with a very small settlement, and renting in the same area was really around sustaining the girls' happiness and thinking about what was going to come down the track. Um, as time went by over the next couple of years, the whole emotional roller coaster ride of not having my home anymore and still working, and the great Australian dream is to have your own home, even though we were happy in our rental unit and the girls were happy and I was happy and everything was going along fine. I had this innate want to have property. So I sort of started listening to a couple of reading a couple of books, going to a couple of seminars, and what I found was that I could borrow money, which really surprised me because I was a single female. And with being able to borrow money and a small settlement that I had and some savings, I actually bought a block of land. And that block of land just about doubled in 12 months. I sold it. I then bought a property in Hobart because all of a sudden I started to realize that I didn't have to live in a home that I was buying. I could make money through property. I bought a property in Hobart that doubled in the next 18 months. I sold it. And then I started to realize there was something in this. And because, my youngest had really started secondary school, I didn't really want to move, and I had this time frame. I started learning more. So I would read more books, I would go to different seminars, I'd listen to things about tax because tax could help you pay for a property and your tenant could help you pay for a property. So all of these things started to resonate. And the more that I researched, the more I realized that I was rent vesting. I was renting where I wanted to live to make the girls happy, but I was actually making money out of property elsewhere. And so that was the trajectory that I put myself on. And yes, I did come across some mistakes I made, but from those mistakes, I learned very quickly what not to do and how to make sure that I was timing the market and making sure that I was getting something that had a good return on investment. The numbers had to work for me. There are a lot of people out there that don't understand numbers, but I suppose I'm fortunate enough. I do understand numbers and I do understand return on investment. And it just catapulted. And the more that I did this and the more successes I had family and friends ask me what I was doing because I was a single mum and I had properties by this time. And as they asked me, I started to realize I had to write things down. So I wrote a book about it. And then I had my strategies. And then along the way, I did remarry. I have remarried along the way. My husband kept on saying to me, you need to tell people about this. You need to show people about this. You need to educate people about this. And so I started my business, Smarter Property Investing. But basically, the business is fundamentally on what I learned from becoming a single mother, having to sell my home, and wanting to get back into the property.
Mm-hmm.
But I realised I didn't have to get back into property for my own home. It was more
Mm-hmm.
about making money. And by making money, eventually I had really good deposits to buy my own
Mm-hmm.
home. Okay, so it took it was a roundabout lesson learning. It was
Mm-hmm.
things I had to find out, things that I had people help teach me. And then the
Mm-hmm.
more I learned and the more I was helping family and friends, and all my kids have got property, or my family's got property, everyone was doing it. That's where I
Mm-hmm.
started the business. So now I educate people about doing exactly what I did and how they can do it. And in today's world, a lot of people are saying, I'll never get into the property market. Yes, you can. There are different ways and different strategies. And
Mm-hmm.
if you understand that, yes, your home is important to you, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the mortgage that you're attached to the dwelling that you live in at this particular point. You can actually build it up and eventually have your own home. Does that make
Mm-hmm.
sense?
Yeah, that's amazing story from that girls and then finding out property in Hobart from Melbourne. And then now it's a common thing, but I think your time it was like a really an adventurous move that you have done. And then now we are proving a system that it will work. And that's the reason that we can clearly work with you because you have done it for yourself. It's not just yesterday. It's like a real proven system and then you helped a lot of people in that journey. And then some people always have a mindset, oh, I'm already separated, I'm a failure, I didn't do the really well in my life, so will I get into this property or will I be a successful person in that, or will I get a house? So that type of self-doubt is always there for women. So I really want to check with your mindset at that time when you started this for your girls, going to these different seminars and believing those people. So, what will be your advice on the people, on the mindset of that people that who are thinking, oh, do I need to do it or should I just stay where I am?
I think before you make any decision, we have to come back to three basic rules that I have implemented myself. And
Mm-hmm.
these three basic rules didn't happen overnight. I learned them as I went along. And the more I understood these three basic rules, it helped me make very informed decisions. And the
Mm-hmm.
very informed decisions create a lot of success.
Yeah.
So you may have listeners out there that are sitting on the fence, they just don't know what to do. And most of the time, it's fear.
Mm-hmm.
It's in fear of, am I going to do the right thing? What if I make a mistake? What if that goes bad? What if I lose my job? What if where I move to I don't like the area? There are a lot of unknowns, and
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately I can't answer any of those because it's fear, and fear to me is false expectations appearing real. And when something appears real, it's very hard to not think that you can change it.
Mm-hmm.
So when my fear started to dissipate, it started to dissipate because of things I was putting in place that I didn't realize I was putting in place until I looked back and I realized they were my rules. And subconsciously, I was making rules, and those rules have steadfast with me. The three rules that I come up with is you need to know your numbers. Now,
Mm-hmm.
knowing your numbers isn't just about can I borrow money? Knowing your numbers is if you're currently renting and you're comfortable renting and you're covering all your household expenses and you're able to save, and then you may be able to borrow money. Adding an investment property helps you from a taxation benefit. It shouldn't be the reason why you buy an investment property, but it does help you that way. But it
Mm-hmm.
needs for you to understand that you understand your own numbers in your household income coming in, less all your household expenses. Then you do exactly the same thing with an investment property. The income coming in from the investment property, less all the expenses. So you've got to know your numbers. First
Mm-hmm.
rule, know the numbers and be
Numbers.
very realistic about those numbers because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about you ladies, but I like shopping. I like new shoes. I like traveling. I like going out for dinner. I like, spending money, but that's my discretionary spending. So when I'm looking at my numbers, I've got to make sure that I can still do the things I want to do. I need to compromise on some things, but am I still going to be okay if I compromise and I'm going to get what I want? So know your numbers, ladies. It's not an easy thing, but know your numbers. The
Mhm.
second rule is your risk profile. There is fear and something will go wrong. So we
Mm.
need to understand if something goes wrong, how are you equipped for that? Are you equipped for it emotionally? And are you equipped for it with some sort of cash buffer? Do you have a credit card that you've never used if something goes
Mm.
wrong? Have you got a bit of savings? When your risk profile comes to play, are you very aggressive in your risk profile or are you very conservative? So,
Mm.
another time to be very honest with yourself, what is your own risk profile? What keeps you up at night? Will you be able to sleep? How is this going to affect your lifestyle? Is it going to affect your family, your children, by your risk profile? And if your risk profile is extremely conservative,
Mhm.
investing in property may not be the thing for you. It might be saving, it might be shares, it might be something else. And then the third rule is paramount to everything that you do, and it
Mhm.
is the umbrella of the first two rules. Why are you doing this? You
Mm.
have to have your own why. Just because your next door neighbour's doing it, or just because your family member's doing it, or just because some person has told you you have to do this, may not necessarily be your why. You need to have a why. And the why in my case was to rent and keep my daughters happy, stay in the community. But along the way, I learned how to make money and get my own property as well. So my why in the very beginning was to keep my girls happy, keep them in the same community, and learn how to do this and accept the new way of life and what the new normal was. And then
Mm.
when all that happened and things started taking place, I had a clear mind to start doing things that would become successful. So, three rules, ladies: know your numbers, know your risk profile, and above all, understand why you're doing this. What is your why?
Wow, that's a great message. So, if you are listening, ladies, and if you think that the property can be our magic to get, I would say rich and peaceful, especially if you are in that real decision-making point, this is what you need to do. And I love the way that, Christine, you mentioned the fear, the false expectation appearing in real, like, that's a real way of thinking, not just in the property, but in your life. If you fear anything, that's a great, great lesson. That's a golden nugget I picked up from that great conversation. And then that three basic rule. And I believe that why is always pushing you out, right? I'm doing this for that why, the reason behind what I'm doing is really important with everything. That's clearly giving you that passion and at the same time the life to that passion. So thank you so much for that. I can clearly see that you are really good at math, and I was going through your book and you giving lots of examples and reasoning, things like that. And as maybe I can't really say that a silly question, but if I'm not good at math and figuring out my first number, like the basic rule, like I know my numbers, and simply jumping into this investment property, will that be a wrong decision?
No, it's so we have many advisors around us. If we're not feeling well, we'll perhaps go to the chemist to see can we buy something from the chemist. If we're not still feeling better, we'd go to the GP. If you're in business, you would generally have an accountant.
Yeah.
If you're working, you have to put in a tax return. So numbers are in our life every day. And
Mhm.
there are people who just don't like numbers. And I understand that, okay? I
Yeah.
totally understand it. But it can be as basic as you either work on, your computer or your phone. You go in and you have all the apps where you can start a budget, where you can make sure that you're looking after your cash flow. What is your
Mhm.
expenditure? So we've got lots of technology out there now that can help you with your numbers without you even knowing what numbers do. You just input the information. You
Mm,
know, it's as simple as when you go to the supermarket, straight away put in what you've spent at the supermarket. You know, you may have had to go to the chemist next door, and then you may have had to go somewhere else to pick something else up, and all of a sudden you get home, and unless you've documented it or put it into an app straight away, you will forget what you've spent that day. I know, I've
mm,
done it. You know, you might have just grabbed a takeaway coffee, and you know that's $5.50. It just adds up. So knowing your numbers, use the technology around you to understand what your household income is, less all your
mm,
expenses. Use the technology. And then eventually, if you start compiling this information, you know, in a month's time, you can see where the money's going, and you'll think, oh gosh, I didn't need that coffee, or gosh, I didn't realize I did that. And then all of a sudden, you're more aware of your numbers. So
mm.
you need to train yourself to, you don't have to be a mathematician. You just need to train yourself to document the information through the apps, use the technology, and, you know, follow your cash. Where's it going? Where's it coming in from? And then bit by bit, there you go, very good.
There
And
you
then
go.
yeah, bit by bit, you start to accumulate those numbers, and all of a sudden, those numbers turn into very good numbers. So I would suggest that.
Yeah, thank you. So I was with Christine for a workshop, her workshop that she used to do. The $100 I got from her, and I'm keeping that because it's a real good testimony that the exercise that I'm thinking about now, Christine, is that you asked a question, how you can save $100 by, stopping whatever that you're doing at the moment, like, $2 here or a coffee or maybe you're doing some switching off that light thing and then with the one that you're counting in your the dollars roaming around in your house and all those one. And if you can figure out that $100 missing, that like in all different things, I still remember the exercise and that the power because sometimes we feel like we do not know how to count the money, but the way that you clearly explained that there are tools now that you clearly use it and then make sure that we have that cash flow to invest. And sometimes you can come, like, how we do that meal prep, you can clearly put that preparation for your cash flow. And the way that you do your workshops is really resonating to single mom because that day when I was going through that calculation, I had more than $100 that I could save. And remember that we were having that competition to figure out how you can continue to save that money. So my question will be how you as a smarter property investing organization and the smarter person, the how to like save the money, how people who are listening now can approach you and then how you can help to start building their wealth in property.
Thank you, Bismi. So, of course, I have a website, and my business is smarterpropertyinvesting.com.au. So, if you go to the website, smarter, SMARTER, propertyinvesting.com.au, there's a button, Chat with Christine, and what I offer is a complimentary conversation. Any part of this journey needs to start with a conversation. And in essence, this may be the right journey for you or it may not. And I'm very clear if I believe it is or it isn't. I will give you, your listeners, hints and tips about A, how to start saving money, and B, are they on the trajectory and what do they need to start putting in place to see that in, the next 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, this could be a goal that they'd like to achieve.
Mm,
Just one thing on the saving the $100. Yes, it is. It's quite a fun exercise when you start doing it. A lot of people think, you should just be checking if you currently have a mortgage. You should check your interest rate. You should check your health insurance. You should check your energy bills. You should check, your motor insurance and things like that. So they're looking at the big things, and
mm,
yes, you should check those every 12 months to 2 years to make sure that you're on the right plans, mobile, streaming services, all those things. You should do that. But in actual fact, when you break it down even more and you think about the money that you've spent today and you document it today, you are surprised at the decision making you'll make. You'll think, oh, I plan to go out to lunch today with a couple of girlfriends. Well, you might have been thinking that you've allowed X amount of money for that day. But when you actually go to the restaurant, you rethink about what you're going to spend. Or you might say, let's not go out today, lunch, girls. Let's just go for a coffee walk. We'll grab a coffee and we'll go for a walk. So all of a sudden, you may have spent 50, 60 or $80 on lunch that day, but you're only spending it on coffee and you're having a walk and you're catching up with a girlfriend. There are so many little ways of
Mm.
adding to that $100 without thinking it has to be these big things, spending hours on line checking and comparing, or hours on the phone waiting on hold to see whether or not you can get a better rate. Yes, you do need to do that, and you do need to do that definitely every two years. But it's the
Mm.
little things that add up, and the little things add up very quickly. They add up more quickly than the big things.
That's exactly right. And another, I would say the culprit is the subscriptions that we do.
Yes,
We always do this free trial, and then that's my personal
and
experience. I never remember to stop that
cancel it.
before the
Yes.
day. So even though we put that in the calendar, I'm just thinking about my YouTube, when the premium is finishing, we need to stop it. Otherwise, that's money that we are giving other people without even knowing. And maybe if we are in an all online world, new to that online world, there are lots of trainings that they're doing to understand how to do all these bits. But I personally prefer find out Christy first, and then Christine's first conversation will give you a thorough understanding where you are sitting, which area that you need to make sure that to get that confidence to start your investing. And I highly recommend get that 45 minutes golden nugget from Christine and go to her website and connect with her. The reason I'm saying it's not just that 45 minutes, you will be getting lots of referrals, and then the wealth of knowledge that she had from all these experiences that she did. And then she is very much passionate about helping people and going around the networks and giving this pro bono seminars everywhere. That I love the way that you're sharing, Christine, in all different places. So I just want to go back to your life that you started as a single mother, then gone to, motherhood again, and now it's a grandma. And then I would say the fashionable grandma helping your kids to taking everywhere, even especially I saw your sailing photos and everything. So you are keeping your energy, your youth movement always active through different activities. And I'm sure that you have some real routine to take that consistent energy in life. So can you help us to understand how you are doing then? What are the tips that you can share with us to get that charisma going along with all this business process that's happening in your life?
I think the most important thing is to enjoy faith and have faith.
Mm.
I think the next most important thing too is you need to understand that you need to love yourself. And then once you love yourself, you can love others.
Mm.
My charisma, I just love life. Gosh, I'm 70 next year. So, time flies. You forget that time flies. But yes, I love being a wife. I love being a mother. I love being a grandmother. I love being a sister and auntie and a family friend. I think also with my age, of course, I've been through losses. I've lost parents and my in-laws, and I think as you journey through life, you can make a decision. You can either feel like the victim, and there are a lot of women out there that do feel like victims. I chose not to be a victim. I chose to honor my girls and what they wanted to do, and I then chose to honor myself and move forward. And out of that, I suppose I'm just very fortunate and very lucky that I have wonderful clients, and I really enjoy doing what I'm doing. Yeah. So there's sort of no magic formula there. I think it's just you have to love life and embrace life and understand we will have hurdles, we will have bumps, but it's how we approach those or how we react to when something goes wrong. And one of my journeys was breast cancer, and I'm
Mm.
very grateful that I've been through that and I'm out the other side. But it was having a positive attitude. Yes, so be positive, stay happy, true to yourself, have faith, and love. Love conquers all.
Yeah. I do remember that while you were having your hospital journey, you still helping other people, and then going through your business. That was like motivation for you to come out of everything and facing everything with that great faith. That's really important. I'm actually having a bit of like a studies about single parenting, and then I created a framework of 4F: faith, family, finance and feminism. And I always pick you as a finance lady because you
Yes.
always talk about finance, but I know that faith is also another an element. And then you mentioned that your family, that you have different roles in your family, and the feminism, like staying up and speaking up for women. So I can clearly see that four elements actually working together in you perfectly. So just want to check with you with that four elements and women who are coming into the world of business after maybe like a trauma after this separation. What can be your suggestions or advice to keep these elements alive and active together in their life? I know that it's so hard to come well versed in all the areas of intersectionality, but again, all the basic elements for them.
I'm going to go back to the F. I think find a friend. I
Mm,
think it's very important to understand that you are allowed to be upset. You do not have to be happy every day or 24
yeah,
hours a day. There is no such thing about being happy 24 hours a day.
yeah.
I also feel that by finding a friend and allowing that friend to listen to you, and that friend is there to listen. That friend is not there to give you advice, not to show you the path, but just to listen. So I think finding a friend to be able to vent and vent quite openly, because what's happening to you or yourself is actually you. It's not
Mm,
them, and it's no one else. It's happening to you. So I feel that you need to be able to vent without judgment. And if you get to do that, believe it or not, psychologically and physiologically, our body then has changed the chemical imbalance that's in our body at that particular time, and we can go from being negative to positive. So
mm,
yes, it's not going to be an easy every day. Everything's going to be wonderful and magically everything's going to turn out, like a bed of roses. It doesn't happen that way. But if you stay positive and if you allow yourself that friend to vent, and sometimes you may not be able to physically vent to someone, write it down. You just write it down and burn it in the end if you don't want anyone else to read it. But you do need to get that negative energy out, and by getting that
mm.
negative energy out, you bring positive energy back in. And I
Yeah.
think that helps you refocus and stay on track, and that's where the successes start to happen.
Oh, I like that. Friend to vent. And I think that's the basic starting point for all other F. I love that. So that's great. So my mothers, I would say that, I was talking about single mothers, distant mothers, and soon to be mother. And if you are in a family and if you are away from the family, these are the things that you need to know. You need to find out a friend, first of all. That's the best basic step. Whatever that you are planning to do in your life, can be a career, can be a business in properties, or can be like a life-changing experience with a different area. So try to get a friend. I love that one that I will be practicing that. And I can see how it will be like, impacting you as someone is actively listening and then feeling whatever that we are going through rather than writing on a paper. I believe whoever we can trust and then share that. It's a wonderful way of connecting and then improving ourselves. So thank you so much for that. I have another question that I used to ask to everybody, and especially it's my personal journey of single parenting and coming out of this is we always believe I believe in Catholicism. I believe in forgiveness. I believe that the God has a great purpose in me, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. But always one line is a bit of like a confusion, I would say, or maybe like trying deep into that. we always that say that we need to forgive and then to move on, but we should not forget what happened. So that's a statement. I'm getting different opinion from different guests, but I would love to hear from you, Christine. What do you suggest?
I very much agree with you, Bismi. Many things happen in life, and we understand grief, and most people think grief is because we've lost someone, they've
Mm,
passed on. Grief comes in many different ways. We
mm,
have a grief if a marriage ends. We have a grief if we've lost our job. We have a grief if we've got a beautiful something in our home and accidentally it got broken. Okay,
mm,
so grief we share in many different ways, and grief comes into our life in many different ways. And it's very easy to blame someone when you're going through grief. And the
mm,
7 steps of grief, anger and blame very much are at the top. They're very much at the top. But it's not until you go through the process of grief in all the stages of grief that you really do start to understand that you should forgive what's happened, but you
mm,
shouldn't forget. And the reason why I believe it's the forgiving allows your chemical balance to go back to positive because you've released the negative anger and blame. So forgiving. But you can't forget because there would have been a lesson in the learning of that grief.
mm,
The marriage broke up. There would
mm,
have been a lesson in that learning. We lost a friend. There would have been a lesson. We lost our job or we left a job. There would be a lesson in that. So I feel that it's don't forget because you need to remember the lesson. And sometimes the lesson doesn't come up straight away, but
mm.
eventually when you forgive, the lesson appears.
Yeah.
So I am very much in agreement. Forgive and forget. But it doesn't happen at the same time. It will
Mm.
happen at a different time and at different stages as you go through the grieving process.
Yeah, okay. I love the way that you picked up that seven step of grief. That's where we start with anger, then with all different emotions and ending up forgetting and forgiving. That's an amazing way of picking that up. Christine, thank you for that. So I'm just recapping the basic property, smart property investing rules, like, know your numbers, know your risk profile, and then get that cash buffer, and then figuring out why you're doing that. And then the fear is the main thing that you need to make sure that what is your fear. Here it's like in a false expectation. So those are the main thing that I picked up as a person who need to start something from the scratch and then build their life there. And I know that you have done that. You have learned different things, and then you mentioned how you're doing that. You're loving your life and then giving that energy to the whole life. And then I can see that your smile is your energy. You always take that with that wonderful smile from your heart. So I would really love to check with you, and especially for my audience, you have the wealth of experience in your life, in your business, in your motherhood. So, what can be the thing that a mother, maybe a young single mother, thinking that I'm all alone, I don't know what to do. So, what will be um, some tips that you can share to support them emotionally?
My youngest granddaughter now is 7, she'll be 8 in May. So long time since I've had a young child. Um, Depending on the age of the children for a single mother, and if they're preschool, I really
Mhm.
feel that it would help if got involved in a community group. And it could be a play group, it could be a mother's group. It could be taking a walk and ending up the park and doing something like that. So I feel we've got to uncover isolation. And if you are isolated, we've got to uncover isolation and work toward how we can be not so isolated. And most municipalities have these type of community groups. And if you contact the local municipality, you'll be able to find something. Then, of course, at the local shopping centre, there's generally a community board where things may be happening. Get involved in community Facebook groups whereby you can attend something. I don't want you to be online. I'd like you to go out and physically meet someone because meeting you know, it brings up all these other things, and it's really good. If your children are already at school and, you know, there's no access for you to be joining groups because your children are already at school, so they're past that young age, you know, once again, the municipality, there will be groups within your municipality that do get together and do different things. Look, one thing I did a very, very long time ago, and this was before, you know, the whole Facebook and letting things know, I actually put a couple of letters in a couple of mailboxes, and I said, if there's anyone out there that wants to go for a walk at 5 o'clock at night, you know, I'm going to start at this particular spot and I'm going to walk for about an hour. Look, I did that for a few months, and it was really funny, the relationships that came out of it. Eventually it stopped because winter happened and all that sort of stuff. But, you know, sometimes you need to be the strong one to make the first step so you're not isolated and,
Mm.
you know, work towards that. It comes down to sometimes you have to put, well, not sometimes, you have to put the effort in. It's just not going to come to you. You have to put the effort in. And I suppose that aligns with what I do with my business. There has to be a compromise. We want materialistic things, but they
Mhm.
can't just be given to us. We've got to work toward them. So we've got to compromise on something. We've got to compromise on that coffee. We've got to compromise on that dinner. We've got to compromise on that new pair of shoes. So the compromise, if you're feeling isolated or lonely, you might have to put yourself out there and take the step to do something first.
That's great. I think it's more of like that compromising your comfort zone and come out of it and then do it. Yeah, that's great. I'd like to end up this conversation with you, Christine, with one question that will be like, I believe that will motivate our listeners. I'm just wanna check with you, what will be your proudest moment in your life?
Oh, wow. I've had many. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that's a really tough one. I went through breast cancer. I've had two beautiful children. I've had many illnesses along the way. Being able to be able to give back without judgment.
Mm.
Believe it or not, being divorced and moving on, that was very
Yeah.
hard, but
Mm.
it was a proud moment. My story started off, I was 15 and 4 months, and I had to leave school when I was 15 and 4 months. So I suppose my proudest moment was I didn't want to leave school, but I had to leave school. But here I am, you know, 50 odd,
Yeah.
60 years
Educating.
later, and, you know, I always wanted to be a teacher, and I never ever got to do that because I had to leave school. So I believe I've ended up being what I wanted to be in the first place, and that's a teacher around maths. So
Yeah.
my proudest, I'm sorry, Bismi, I can't give you one. There are so many I'm very grateful for. Yeah.
That's what, like, it's empowering other people, because if you're starting from 15 and if you look at that like long 60 plus years, what you have achieved is the proudest moments, because if you are coming out of your comfort zone, that's doable. That's what you are showing us. So that is motivational. So that's great. Thank you so much for, like, sharing. I would say lots of nuggets that we can take and actively participate in our own, like, self discovery. So that three basic thing, the 7 steps of grief, and I pick up that fear is one of the best thing that you need to pick up every time in your life. So thank you again, Christine, for coming and sharing your wisdom with us on this platform called Unmuted with Bismi Palatty.
Very welcome, and I truly appreciate it. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to share with your listeners. Thank you, Bismi.
Thank you. Thank you. So, my listeners, if you connect with her and if you think that, yes, I should connect with Christine for my chat and start my journey, I would encourage to get that. I will be putting her details under these videos in the show note. This is coming up into the Spotify and in our YouTube podcast, and I will be putting up all the details for you to connect with Christine, because I connect her personally for a long time now, and I know how she can make miracles in your life. And it's not just in the property, but it's in your own life. How you can connect, how you can change different mindset, thought process. What are the different ways that you can enjoy your life? So I would highly recommend connect with the Christine and then get start your journey of smarter property investing. So, thank you again. And if you love this podcast, just subscribe and give us a review. And then we'll come back with another wonderful guest next time. Thank you so much. This is Unmuted with Bismi Palatty.